Hello, could you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Emma Robertson.
And where are you from?
I am from Aberdeen in Scotland, but I grew up in Australia.
When did you move to Australia?
I moved to Australia in 1981 when I was 7 years old. And if you cast your mind back to 1981, it was before anyone got on an aeroplane, before anyone wrote an email. It was the other side of the world. So it was an enormous adventure at the time.
And how did it feel leaving the UK as a 7-year-old to go to Australia, the other side of the world?
Well, I think this is really funny because we had no information about what the other side of the world was like. All the information we had about the other side of the world came from encyclopedias, which you pulled off your shelf or you borrowed from a library. So I didn't have a clue about what I was going to. And I remember thinking I was going to live in a Robinson Crusoe style house. I thought we were going to live in a shack on a beach. So I was sort of excited and a little frightened because I didn't know what I was going to. But neither did my parents. My parents had never been to Australia. They'd never left Scotland. So for all of us it was an incredibly exciting time, but also really, really fearful time too, because no one knew what they were going to.
Were you leaving behind many family?
Yeah, we were leaving all our family behind. So no one had ever left Scotland before. We were the first in our family to have done that. So I have this memory of, as I said, I'm from Aberdeen, which is a really small town, and it was a smaller town in 1981, but it's a very tiny airport, and more or less the airstrip runs right to a shed, and you leave from the shed. But I remember the entire airport being full of our family and friends saying goodbye, and it was such an enormous thing because everyone thought that they'd never see us again. I remember the tears, and my mother in points of tears, and yeah, it was one of those memories that will stay with me the rest of my life. Yeah, we never thought we'd come back.
What was the initial reaction from your family? Was it a case of do it the first time because you might never get a chance to do it again, or?
The family were just distraught. No one wanted us to go. So it wasn't the adventure that travel is these days, when people throw on their backpack and just disappear and everyone knows they'll come back, or they'll pick the phone up when they get, or they'll text the other side of the world. It was literally, people were terrified. They didn't know what we were going to. We didn't really know what we were going to, and people didn't think they'd see us again. So the family were really, really upset. It was an enormous upheaval. Very different from nowadays.
What was the first experiences of Australia?
I remember, it's funny what you do remember. I remember as I said, we didn't know anybody. We went to Sydney. We didn't have any contacts. We didn't know a soul. So I remember we left Scotland, it was November, so it was freezing, freezing cold, and we arrived in Sydney in the summer. So I remember the heat, and I remember the sound of cicadas, insects. There was things flying about and things that I was seeing in those first 24 hours that I'd never seen in my entire life before. And I also remember little things like having Rice Krispies with a particular kind of milk that I'd never drunk before. So it's funny what you do remember, and it's all those tiny things. It's sounds, it's smells, it's what Sydney looked like, what Sydney Harbour looked like, and that sort of very blue sea and the white opera house and all the things that you've just read about in encyclopedias, and seeing them before you. Yeah, it was amazing.
As a 7-year-old, was you able to notice the little intricacies between the social values of the UK and Australia?
Yeah, I noticed really early on because I went to school immediately, so I obviously turned up as a little girl from Scotland, 7 years old with a Scottish accent, 3 months into it, the accent had gone, and I became, well, as you do when you're a child, you're just desperate to belong. And I was always conscious I was going home to a family that spoke in a different way and had a different set of values and culture and all the rest of it. And yet every day I was going into school, and it was another culture entirely. So there were differences, and I really, really was aware of those. And those differences probably. The cultural differences, they're not immediately obvious to people, but Australia's a very, very different place, and it was a really, really different place again in the early 80s than it is now, for sure. So I was very aware of cultural differences, and in fact those cultural differences are what eventually I guess made me come back to the UK, and made my entire family come back to the UK. And again, that was sort of a decision that at the time no one could understand. Why would you leave Australia?